showcase the leaders and statesmen from countries other than the UK and USA. I share with you an extract from the paper by Francis Sejersted, chairman of the Norwegian Nobel Committee from 1991 to 1999, that is published in the Nobel Prize.Org. He writes as follows, I quote, I have cited the general clause in Nobel's will saying that the prize should be given to those who in the preceding years have conferred the greatest benefit on mankind. With regard to the Peace Prize, Nobel defined this as having done the most or the best work for fraternity between nations, for the abolition or reduction of standing armies, and for the holding and promotion of peace congresses. The most difficult stipulation to live up to has undoubtedly been in the preceding year. This is now understood to indicate the most recent contributions in the various cultural fields to which the will refers. Where the Peace Prize is concerned, the wording has been seen as opening up opportunities to engage in processes which have not yet reached a conclusion, but where there has been clear evidence of progress, as in the democratization process in South Africa or the peace process in the Middle East, for which the Peace Prizes were awarded in 1993 and 1994. The prize awarded in 1998 to John Hume and David Trimble of Northern Ireland can be seen in the same light. The prize, in other words, is not only for past achievements, although that is the most important criterion. The most important provision, however, is contained in the term fraternity between nations. This general and open provision has provided a basis for the wide definition of peace-related work which the committee has applied right from the start. The committee also takes the possible positive effects of its choices into account. Among the reasons for adding this as a criteria is the obvious point that Nobel wanted the prize to have political effects. Awarding a peace prize is, to put it bluntly, a political act, which is also the reason why the choices so often stir up controversy. The most controversial choices have been active politicians or statesmen, often selected on the grounds of a particular act or an intervention in a particular situation, rather than because of a lifelong effort for peace. The peace concluded after World War II was completely different, as the war had been. This is an example of the introduction of principles that are new in an international context, like the principles of human rights and individual responsibility. The problem which this procedure after the Second World War put on the agenda, and which is more pressing today than ever, is what is the right attitude to take to a past marked by extensive breaches of fundamental human rights? What settlements can be reached with a heritage of conflict and brutality? To what extent does reconciliation depend on amnesty, on winking at crime instead of demanding justice, assuming any justice were possible? The Peace Prize has on some occasions been awarded to representatives of two parties to a conflict who have agreed to break out of the vicious circle of violence in order to move towards peace and reconciliation. The problem with these awards has been that some of the laureates have been partly responsible for the war, violence, or repression that preceded the decision to break out of the vicious circle. However, only the first of the awards mentioned met with more criticism than support, assuming this can be measured. So it looks as if the committee's policy of honoring what can be interpreted as real conversions to a peace strategy is being met with understanding and support. A survey of the whole history of the Peace Prize shows that the vast majority of the laureates have been white men of Western origin. In a more dynamic perspective, however, one can see a development in recent decades towards a more global prize, with regard to both the geography and gender. The globalization of the Peace Prize has paralleled its increasing prestige, and there is probably a connection. Our view of the world has changed. It has grown smaller. However great Nobel's vision, it was not without its limitations. At that time, the Third World was in some respects below the white man's horizon. Nobel's own words exposed the limited perspective of even the most cosmopolitans of that era. The question can nevertheless be asked whether or not how far is it possible to escape one's own cultural background when evaluating the work of candidates from all over the world. Do we share the same values with regard to peace wherever we come from? Do we share the same ideas of human rights? And if we don't, how can a small citizen of a small Western country like Norway evaluate the nationals of other countries on their own terms? Must the Nobel Peace Prize inevitably, to some extent, reflect a Western worldview? The Peace Prize Committee is in a privileged position inasmuch as it does not have to solve the universalism or the relativism problem at the general level. But the problem is there. The selection of the individual prize winners is never easy, but the focus on particular cases does make it possible to take into consideration the whole range of relevant factors, whether of a universalist or a culturally related kind, and to strike a balance. The laureate will symbolize goodwill and purity of heart all over the world, but the choice must also win sympathy in his or her own cultural environment. It is the committee's experience that it is possible to find worthy candidates who represent universal ideals of human rights in the most varied cultures. The choices of Aung San Suu Kyi and Carlos Bello are strong testimony. The peace that is honored is a peace that is rooted in hearts and minds. The work to be credited is work for fraternization, tolerance, trust, and understanding. Laureates must be more than skilled diplomats. It is important for them also to be able to stand out as symbols of goodwill. Unquote. The Nobel Peace Prize awarded to leaders and statesmen from other countries from 1901 to 1936 are showcased here on September 15th, and the Nobel Prizes awarded from 1960 to 2019 will be showcased on the 18th of September. I invite you to immerse yourself in the powerful and moving speeches and lectures by these great leaders and statesmen. This Nobel Laureate Showcase has been created to inspire all to take action and work towards establishing peace on earth.